What do you guys have on the platform in terms of assets?
We just are crossing 5 billion. I don't know if that's an aspirational 4.9 something billion or if we're over. It depends on what I think the market did today. That's what I walked into, was a global financial crisis.
Yeah, zero pressure, right? How did it start? What was the catalyst for that? Was it something you always thought that you would enter into?
No, in fact, I didn't even know about it. It was a happy accident, really. So many people in the investment side of the world, it's performance, performance, performance. But for me, it's what does this accomplish for the clients? And if I can instill that and keep that so that does translate for the next 3 decades, that's why I want my lasting legacy to be.
What's next for Tim Harder? Tim Harder, Chief Investment Officer over at Quotient out in Dallas. It is great to be with you, my friend.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate being here, man.
Absolutely, man. So you are no stranger to Investor Magazine. You've been a contributor on the editorial side since day one, so we appreciate that. But I wanted to sit down with you today. It's great to be in person and really just hone in on your history in the industry, talk a little bit about personal life. Wanted to really just get a deep understanding for who you are, what makes you tick, and go from there. So I want to start, for those that aren't familiar with Quotient, let's give you a little plug there. What is Quotient? Tell me a little bit about the firm, size, stature, who you guys serve, all those types of things.
Yeah, so we're Quotient Wealth Partners. We've been around now almost 3 years as Quotient, but well over 20 years as a team that's been working together through several versions that I'm sure we'll touch on here as we go forward. But we represent about 2,500 households, so 2,500 families. So my job as Chief Investment Officer is to take care of those 2,500 people, make sure they don't run out of money. And we do that through 5 offices, 3 of them based in Texas. We got a Denver and Jersey office, and maybe soon to be out in California. So we'll keep moving.
What do you guys have on the platform in terms of assets?
We just are crossing 5 billion. I don't know if that's an aspirational 4.9 something billion or if we're over. It depends on what I think the market did today, perhaps. But yeah, right around there.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about size and stature in terms of the firm. How many advisors? What's the partnership look like?
Yeah, so
all that good stuff.
Yeah, we've got about almost 30 advisors in total.
Most of those in Dallas, or are they?
No, they're all over. Our actual largest contingency of advisors is in our Houston office.
Oh, wow.
And we've also got a pretty good size contingency in Denver, as well as Dallas and San Antonio and Jersey. Have those are teams of about 3, so
yeah,
a little smaller,
kind of satellite offices, if you will.
Yeah, but growing.
Yeah,
growing. Yeah,
man, very cool. I didn't realize that you guys had multiple satellite offices. So are there certain kind of cohorts of individuals that you're serving?
Yeah.
Specialty, that sort of thing?
Traditionally, and this is what we built our whole business on, is helping corporate employees sort of navigate that point in time into retirement and then through retirement. So these are people that have worked 30 years at probably like a Fortune 100 company and are now trying to figure out what do they do on the other side of these things and how do I go from being a saver to a spender.
Yeah. I obviously, as you know, come from an advisor background. I used to always say, yeah, you go from being an employee to being your own employer very quickly in retirement. And having to cut your own paychecks. So, well, very cool. Well, I want to rewind the tape a little bit. I want to talk about maybe some early roots for you.
Yeah.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Iowa, north central rural Iowa.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. What was that like?
It was, I think it's a great place to grow up, great place to raise a family, great place to be from. And I actually love it. I'm heading back there shortly here in the next few weeks to go visit. But I also knew I wanted to get out and do some more things. So I got shot out to Philly for college and
didn't look back.
I won't say I didn't look back at all. I did do a little detour in Iowa back right after graduation for a few months and then moved slightly west all the way to Omaha.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
So
all the way across the river.
Are you one of many, or are you?
I'm oldest of 3 growing up.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but big disparity in age. So I've got siblings are quite a bit younger than me. So
gotcha.
And they remind me of that all the time now. So,
well, you've got wisdom that comes with that too, right?
That's right.
So, I take it they're still back in Iowa.
They are. Yeah, they're both back in Iowa. Although my family, my wife's family, they're all back in Iowa.
Yeah.
So.
And you said you went to school where?
I went to University of Pennsylvania. We did Wharton School, undergrad finance, which was not a traditional way to leave a kind of a small town, Iowa, and end up out in Philly.
Yeah. Well, Philly's an interesting place, particularly I would imagine from someone from Iowa.
Yep.
I being from Texas, have spent a lot of time in Philly. Yeah, it's a little bit of a culture shock, I would imagine.
I do love the cheesesteaks. Still love them. Still try to find the Amorosa rolls wherever I can. And I'm still pretty judgy about the quality of the cheesesteaks when I get them.
Yeah, I hear that. Well, so you're out of college, had a brief stint back in Iowa, and then ultimately, at some point, you ventured into finance and wealth management.
Yep.
How did it start? What was the catalyst for that? Was it something you always thought that you would enter into?
No, in fact, I didn't even know about it. It was a happy accident, really. I ended up really happy accident on a number of fronts. I walked into a profession I didn't know existed, which was financial planning. Wharton teaches you're in this investment world. Your job is to outsmart the guys down the street, outsmart the market. And I end up in sleepier Omaha. There's a little bit more going on than people give it credit for, but ended up there in a financial planning world I didn't know existed. And it was funny, my boss, he was a great mentor as well, but he taught me in that first week, he's like, hey, when you do financial planning, it doesn't really matter if your client needs an investment because you're not selling them an investment. You're finding out what they like, what they need, what's going to help them accomplish their goals, and then you have a solution for everything they need. So it was a much different way. You're putting yourself on the other side of the table with the client, and I didn't know it existed at that time. And then they thrust me into a job that I was just out of school, and head of the investment platform, and that also taught me some early lessons there.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I'm curious because there's so many different avenues someone can take in our industry, right? I mean, you could sit behind the table on the chief investment side. You can be super client facing in terms of going out and mining for new business. So many different spectrums to our world. But once you got into the industry, did you know that you had what's the word I want to use here? A desire to try and figure out how to articulate portfolios and manage those? Or did you ever say, hey, you know what? I think I want to go out and develop new business? Or what was kind of the mindset?
There's things you learn very early on. That's one of the first things I learned is that was not me, making 200 cold calls a day. I wasn't, probably fortunately for me, I failed at that pretty quickly. And so I was, fail fast. That's how you evolve in your careers. So I learned pretty quickly, but I also, I got into that part and I liked the empathy part. I did like dealing with the clients. And, it's funny because I thought, my role was to give them that outperformance or whatever it is. But one, extremely hard to outperform the markets.
Yeah.
Two, to do it consistently is extremely difficult. And three, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It just doesn't matter. Right. So it's all there's discipline and saving. So I don't know, it gave me a little bit different perspective pretty early on, getting close to the clients, but kind of moving on to different spots.
For sure. Well, give us a timeline. Obviously, your roots from jumping into the industry to where you are today required a few navigational turns. I'd love to hear kind of the storyline behind it as it relates to Quotient, but how you got there.
Yeah, so how did I get to Quotient? Like I said, I started off in Omaha in the early mid-90s. I was there for about 5 or 6 years, got a detour to Denver in 99, and if you can probably guess what that detour was, it was a .com startup. It lasted 11 months, and it was a .bomb. Learned a lot from that as well. Then went on to another one of those. It was tied to, what's sad is both of the businesses had really good premises, just a little too early in the process. And I said, okay, now I got to get back to business. So, but that had taken me to Denver, which was a great place to continue and grow my career. Ended up working for a financial planning firm in Highlands Ranch, Colorado, so on the south end of Denver. And then a few years later, got the call from what was then Peak Capital, and that was my current partners today, Brandon and John, saying, hey, look, we're looking to start this. We need to start up our own investment platform. Yeah. What do you think about coming over? And that was February of 2008. So fortunate timing for them, the way maybe the money was being managed before. Unfortunate for me that that was what I walked into, was a global financial crisis.
Yeah, zero pressure, right?
None whatsoever. Like, yeah, you always say the market goes up, you're smart, market goes down, you're dumb. Well,
Yeah.
I walked into a job when I was dumb for the first, 12 months. But,
Yeah. Well, it gives you the wisdom, it gives you experience, it gives you the things that you need to be successful in the future. We'll talk a little bit about investment philosophy here in a minute. So you joined them at Peak,
Yep.
and that's in 2008.
Yep.
What transpired after that?
So we were with Peak for, as Peak, we were kind of rolling along. We were with LPL in the independent broker-dealer space. So we were in the independent world, wanted to do things a little bit differently, and we were just kind of trying to figure out where our skill sets were, I guess, and also some of the things that we needed to be doing differently. And at that time, we knew we needed to be even heavier into the financial planning part of our business. And so we were looking for a partner that could do some of the back office type things, but also support us on the financial planning and let us kind of run and just be client facing, work with clients, find new clients. And that's really what our focus was. And we landed with United Capital, and that was in 2011. So I think we went from about $200 million in managed assets to about $400 million in that little period of time. And then we were United Capital from 2011 till the sale to Goldman in 2019. So.
Was it something about that transaction that spurred the movement towards independence and ultimately where you guys are?
Oh, the 2019 transaction with Goldman. Yeah, absolutely. I think we forgot how much we appreciated the independence, the autonomy, the ability to kind of treat every one of our clients the way they need to be treated in the way that we're capable of doing it.
Yeah.
We get into all of a sudden very entrepreneurial world, and then move into a big organization with 45,000 people. It was very different. I think there were some great things we picked up from that, but it was probably just not the best setup for us for long-term success.
Well, one thing that I've learned from Brandon, having conversations with one of your partners, is the name Quotient, where that comes from, and it speaks directly to what you just spoke to, which is the experience in both from an independent perspective and also a non-independent perspective, and bridging that gap, right?
Yeah, this is sort of the bringing, a bunch of variables together to get to a solution. And so we had the independent broker-dealer, the sort of roll-up RIA, the big New York investment bank, and that set us up for that equation of how do we solve, not only for ourselves and our business and for our clients, but also, how we work for our clients.
Yeah. So ultimately, you made a move because you're now in Dallas. You're no longer in Denver.
Yeah.
You made a move. I know it wasn't entirely for the Mavericks. So what was that conversation like?
Yeah.
Were you pulling, I know you're married, you've got kids. Were you having to pull teeth to try and get the move to happen to Dallas, or did that happen pretty organically?
No, it was definitely some pulling teeth. If anybody that's been to Denver knows it's a lovely place to not only visit, but to live. Gorgeous place. And so my wife's very attached to that. And I think it's just explained our explosion of our business was in Texas, and I needed to be closer to where decisions were being made and where more of our clients were. And so it was a tough conversation, such a tough conversation that my oldest two daughters that were born there are now back at University of Colorado Boulder, both back in Colorado today. But it was funny. Yeah, kicking and screaming. My middle child, the daughter, she was. We were coming through Oklahoma on the way down, and we were just stopping at a Dairy Queen because there's Dairy Queens in Oklahoma, of course, and all of a sudden, they're just playing country music, which we wouldn't have typically had in Dairy Queen in Denver, and she's just breaks out crying, and she's like, "I can't move to Texas. I don't like country music." And I'm like, well, she might have a point. You might have to learn to like it a little bit. Now they're all big country music fans. So
funny how that works.
Yeah,
huh?
Yeah. Good resurgence.
So they're back in Colorado. So you and your wife now in Dallas.
Yep.
Y'all empty nesters?
Got one left. He's going a rising senior, so we got one more year before we're full empty nesters.
Yeah. Well, I'm not there yet either, but I hear that is a life-changing event that is hard to get used to.
It is
in short order.
Yeah. Although they say people are very happy in those empty nest years, so I'm looking forward to that part. But we'll miss the kids for sure.
Yeah. Do you think that your work has inspired any of them to be in finance or wealth management?
Yeah, I would say so. So I've got the oldest is actually working in our Highlands Ranch office, the one that I moved down from. So she's getting to live the life that my wife and I left behind today. So she's working for one of our partners there. And so she's following in those footsteps. And then middle one, she's more on the science side and healthcare side of things. But and the youngest one right now, he's actually, even though he's in high school, he's studying for his CIA exam, which is the alternative investment certification. So
Yeah, well, that
so
can't
he's
hurt.
seeing if he likes it. He's testing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, very cool. So let's talk a little bit about the platform Quotient. I want to kind of get your perspective on what is the goal from a chief investment officer who's managing roughly $5 billion.
Yep.
How do you look at markets? How do you look at alternatives? How do you look at providing everything that virtually any client that you're working with could possibly need? It seems like that's a tall task.
Yes. I mean, you almost, I mean, first of all, we always have to start with that end goal in mind, which is which of these solutions are going to get my client to the finish line 30 years later? So, what is that? What does that entail? And that removes a lot, because a lot of things are designed to trade, designed for short-term perspectives. And when you have a 30-year lens, you don't really need to be looking at things that way. So, we built most of what we do around, being close to the index, being close to the market, keeping costs in line. That's been our primary objective. But, things are changing, and you've got to be adaptive. 30 years ago when I got into business, we were doing load mutual funds, 5.75% sales charge up front. The client invests, and the first day they were worth 94 cents of what they had the day before. And then we moved to this fee-based world, and things have continued to change and evolve. And I think the biggest ones for us are, from the technology side of things. There are ways that I've wanted to manage money for a long time, but it's been either an unscalable process. I mean, I couldn't deliver it across 2,500 people without it being inordinately expensive, or it was just, try to outsource it, and it was really expensive, not really worth the lift. The cost of the technology have come down so dramatically that we're starting to look at things a little bit differently. So, I've always been described, anybody that knows me, has been around me in the industry for a long time, I always say I'm alpha agnostic. I don't believe in that extra outperformance, or it's not worth pursuing, or you can't deliver it in excess of the cost of trying to find it. But I will say this, it's not that I don't believe in it, it's just that I think it's very elusive and very costly to get to. Those costs are coming down. I think that's been helpful. So we've really started to shift in the last couple of years, looking at active in particular in a number of places as a more, where will we add this in? Where will we not add it in? And sort of looking at what is our active budget. And then that leads into the other piece of this, which is the alternative part of the platform. And that is one where I've seen a lot of, maybe a lot of failures. You talk about mistakes that you make or see in 30 years in the business. That's one where I see a lot of, bodies piled up over the course of, many decades. And so I've been very reticent to kind of embrace that for our clients. But a couple of things have happened really recently. I talk about this sort of evolution in our business. And one of the things that's evolved is, number one, the rules haven't changed for who can invest in these things. And so they put these minimums in place, or these thresholds in place 30 years ago in 1996. $1 million, you're accredited. $5 million, you're a qualified purchaser. And more and more and more of our clients every day start meeting those qualifications. And so there's more interest in our clients, and they're getting communicated more that they need to invest in these things. The other part, though, is the same thing, technology and cost. Those things have come down, made it more accessible. And so a lot of the things that we've tried to solve for on that front that made it not scalable, or not worth the cost, or not worth the risk, those things are starting to go away. We're trying to be able to solve for, liquidity, the cost to some extent, still a very expensive place to invest, multiple K1s. You just like the complexity of this thing, which has been enormous. And so we're starting to knock down some of those obstacles, and it's making it a more realistic part of the process.
No doubt about it. Looking back at my advisor days, I think about, again, there's always a place, I think, for alternatives for the right client. but boy, does it introduce some complexity to the situation, right? And I mean, just as something as simple as what you just said, K1s, right? If someone is used to filing their tax return on time every year, and you introduce an alternative sleeve to them, you can tell them to go ahead and kiss that goodbye, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Why do you want your client to upset with you?
Yeah.
You know, and what are you gaining from it?
Yeah.
You know, there's no financial plan that says it's going to be successful only if you invest in alternative investments. But
Yeah. Well, I think, I mean, just based on hearing you say that, and we've had some discussions prior, but it's safe to say the industry has evolved quite a bit in terms of the things that you're looking at today comparative to maybe the things that you were looking at 20 years ago.
Yeah.
What would you say? We're here. We're in this moment. SpaceX is a thing. It's on the front of the mind of everyone. I'm not asking you for predictions or anything like that, but
to the moon, to
yeah,
Mars,
right.
whatever, yeah, right.
Yeah, it's exactly right. What would you say for folks who are incredibly excited about not just SpaceX, but anything related to technology today and where we're going? How do you see that sector? And maybe SpaceX and everything Elon's doing you can segregate that into its own sleeve because it's got its own appeal, right?
Yep.
But when you look at tech today and someone who's on top of things from an investment perspective, I think you're bullish, but what does that look like?
Yeah. So, I mean, this is the biggest, I think it's the biggest conundrum in investing today, honestly, is technology. You see it driving tons and tons of earnings. I think, you know, I like when I talk to our clients, I'm like, are you excited or scared about AI? And usually the answer is both. And I think from an investment standpoint, it's the same thing. It's sort of a both equation. For me, I think it's one of the biggest challenges I've faced as an advisor to our clients is how do you walk that very precarious line between being overexposed or naturally overexposed just because the market gets concentrated so tightly into this one part of the market. You know, I think everybody's seen the statistics now. You're pushing almost 40% in the S&P 500 in just 10 names. That's incredible concentration, and any missteps by just a handful of those companies. And
yeah, I want you to repeat that statistic because I don't think many people understand that. They think of the S&P, they think of 500 companies.
Yeah.
But what you just said, repeat those numbers. 40% of the S&P is comprised of
about 10 names, maybe 10, 11, 9, depending on the day, depending what the market value of some of those big name stocks are. Yeah, and it's really concentrated in this little small sleeve. And for years, clients would say, wow, I'm missing out. I don't have NVIDIA. I'm like, no. Actually, it's the second largest holding in your portfolio. You just don't know it because it's the second largest holding. Now the largest, depending on the day, holding in the S&P 500. So you have this exposure. So, for the last few years, you're just trying to educate clients to say, hey, look, diversification is not the S&P 500 and having Apple, NVIDIA, Microsoft in your portfolio, and on top of that, having triple Qs, the NASDAQ 100 in the portfolio. That's not diversification. That's excessive concentration. Now, to be fair, it's worked fantastically if you've done that. But at some point in time, that game ends. And right. So you need, unending number of examples of, staying in the game too long. And so we're trying to walk that fine line. On the flip side, though, you can't under-diversify to it either because those earnings are real. They're out there. These companies are making tons and tons and tons of money. So you don't want to be under-allocated either. So how do you find that very fine line between is market weighting the right allocation, or can you cheat and be a little bit light on that and still get all of that upside participation? Because most of the market returns have come from those same handful of companies over the last few years.
Makes total sense. One of the things that I'd love to talk to you about is, you're obviously a co-founder of Quotient. And I think that one of the things that I've spent some time in y'all's office, is the energy from young advisors, right? We've got a huge wealth transfer that's going to occur, or is occurring already. And you guys are highly supportive of adopting kind of the next generation of advisors and getting them up to speed and counseling them and working with them in a team structure. I've heard the contrarian side of that, which is, and I don't agree with it at all, which is, I can't work with this individual. They've never even seen a recession. But I'm not really sure that they fully understand the power of a team environment and having investment team working alongside those folks. You don't necessarily have to live through it to understand how to manage it.
Yeah, I always talk to people when they come into this business, because you can't, by definition, have all the experience that somebody might think you. Well, you've got to be a bit of a historian.
Yeah.
You've got to understand. You've got to be looking back and say, what happened in 2008? What happened in 2000, 2002? And when I got in the business, it was what happened in 73, 74, or what happened in 1987 when the market crashed then. And so you've got to be a little bit of a historian. But no, like you typically what happens, so I'll go back in the Wayback Machine to 2008, and what happened was clients are freaking out. Their accounts are down. S&P was down top to bottom 50%. They call the advisors. The advisors are telling them, we're in this for the long haul. They're doing all the things they're supposed to. I mean, this is when you earn your keep. And then the advisors turn around, and I'm having the counseling call with them and saying, hey, remember, we're in this. And they're like, okay, it's like pep talk after pep talk after pep talk, reminding them, jumping on with clients when it's necessary. And then I have to go home, and my wife has to remind me that we're in this for the long term. We've got to, we'll make this. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and living it doesn't necessarily mean that you manage it well, right? So like,
No.
For someone who's maybe looking for a new advisor, to exclude someone who is working in an excellent platform, who's got a great management structure around him that can support the advisor, as compared to maybe an advisor who might have gone through it, but certainly didn't handle it very well, or manage those client portfolios in that moment very well, right? It's hard to size up an advisor, I think, based on age today. There's so many capabilities.
Well, I mean, and if you're number one, how technologically savvy is your advisor?
Right.
There's so many new financial planning tools out there today, and investment. So being on top of things is huge for them. But so they have us to rely on for the sage and the wisdom, but also you're entering into, I talk about this 30-year relationship. And great, if you can have somebody that's 27, 28, 29, they're going to be there all the way through it. All the good stuff when you retire, and you get to do all the travel, all the way through all of the not so great stuff when health starts becoming an issue. And so they're there for you, and they know you, and it's great.
Well, and there's something to be said, I think, for a 28-year-old who's doing really, really well, not necessarily in our business, but doing really, really well in whatever endeavor they're making money, right? They're looking for an advisor. They don't typically want to do business with their dad's advisor or their grandfather's advisor, right? They're trying to find someone that they can relate to.
Yeah.
And you guys seem to really be adopting a culture. I loved seeing the internship program you guys had.
Yeah.
I remember looking at the board. I took some pictures. I showed my wife those, and you guys had everyone's name on their designated area, told them to decorate their desks. I mean, that's culture.
Yeah, that's big. We brought in a new chief of staff. She's fantastic. She kind of heads up that culture part of our business. But super excited. Brings a ton of energy into the office, and and then those folks can become longer term employees. If we have some success there, but also find out, hey, is this business one I'm interested in? And I think getting more people interested earlier on is huge in our space, because I always talk to our folks. We think we're out there struggling to communicate that we're out there and available and able to help people. And we think, well, that's the hardest part. But I actually flip it around. If I'm somebody out there that's thinking about retiring today and going, who do I go to? Who do I trust? Because I think on the outside, we probably all look the same. And I think from our side of the business, those of us that have kind of done things in the RIA space, we're in the financial planning world, we always feel like we're not as differentiated from our competitors, but in reality, we're very differentiated from a lot of the other solutions or the other ways they could end up. So I feel like it's hard for them to figure out what's the difference between us and somebody else.
I agree. Yeah. I was having that conversation just a couple of days ago and talking about, I think the average, I don't want to use the cliche term, the average American, but in reality, that's what we're talking about here, doesn't know the difference between an advisor who maybe works for an insurance company or works for a wirehouse or their local bank or an independent RIA. Yeah. They think all advisors are the same. They all have the same capabilities. and maybe the only separation factor is a designation or something like that.
Yeah.
But that's why I love having these conversations, Tim,
Yeah.
because it allows us to kind of open that can of worms and let ordinary people just kind of have a
Yes.
better understanding.
See inside the firm a little bit.
Yeah, behind the scenes. So
Yeah.
let me we'll wrap up the conversation about Quotient, and then I want to talk to you a little bit about Tim Harder outside of work. Where do you see Quotient in 5 years? What's
Yeah.
on the precipice in terms of growth and all those things?
Yeah. So for us, I mean, we're very always growth focused. I always think if we can, scale what we do, we can bring more resources to clients that we have.
Yeah.
And so that's been really big. We've taken on a lot of initiatives on the client experience recently, including some things adding to our family office, tax, things that are really just designed to help you as, you age or your parents age or dealing with some of those issues that are not even really financially related. So we've been doing a lot more on that front, and then we continue to expand in workplace. I think that's even a bigger challenge. You're seeing a lot of folks, that are my age, a little bit older. They're getting to be making these decisions about where they go, and in unprecedented numbers. Sort of the tail end of the baby boomers are retiring, but the older cohort of Gen X is starting to look at retirement, and so there's a lot of work out there. And so I think we're trying to figure out who else can we help with the way we do things.
Yeah.
If we can support more corporate employees, or maybe even some entrepreneurs that are coming out of their businesses and using our sort of long-term philosophy, people that can look at things past tomorrow and, beyond, decades out, then I think we're a good fit for them.
Yeah, finding that philosophical congruency, right? I mean,
if they want a trader, that's not going to be us, right? If they're looking for transactional type of relationship, that's probably not us. So
yeah. Well, it sounds, and correct me if I'm wrong, you guys are in a position today, based on your success, that you get to kind of choose who you work with in terms of clients, and I've always adopted kind of the mindset that it's a two-way street, right? And I think a lot of folks think that any advisor or every advisor is willing to take them on and do so in a hurry. And I always kind of looked at that as a red flag. If you're someone who is talking to an advisor and all they care about is bringing on assets, as opposed to learning about what makes you tick, so that they can better understand, one, if they can serve you, but two, how well they can serve you, it's a red flag. So it sounds like you guys are really taking the approach of finding philosophical concurrence.
I mean, think about what that relationship is like. You get into the details about kids, marriage, health issues, parents. What are your dreams? What are you most afraid of? And then you sit down and you're meeting maybe quarterly, at least a couple of times a year, and you're talking about these things, and you're doing it over 10, 20 years. I mean, you really want to vet that both ways, right? Because if, I think anybody in business or anybody that works, with any large number of people, you get too many people there's friction there. Either they don't want to take the advice, like they don't value the advice, or they're difficult to work with, or you just don't click as people. You want this to be a friendly and engaging process.
Yeah. Well, there's something, intimate's not the right word, but I mean, finances are sensitive, right? And
very sensitive.
You got to feel comfortable with who you're working with, and that communication is just so important. And if you don't have that ability to create a two-way street, it's impossible, I would imagine.
Yeah, no, you've got to have that communication piece built up. And then the other part of it too is, we're very, very focused. I'd say the overwhelming majority, not maybe overwhelming majority, but large percentage of our clients are married. And, it's not a relationship with maybe the person that's just retiring, right? It's the family, and the most goals that they have are his and hers, whatever the makeup of the family is, it's a family goal, right? And so making sure you have those other participating voices, especially as a lot of people think, hey, I'm not the financial person. I don't really care about that. Tim, I don't really care about what's going on in the investment markets today, but you got to engage those things, because what you do and the financial decisions you make impact their lives a lot. So you really try to make sure you connect not just with one, but with two.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned marriage. I'm going to take a right turn out of the business and talk to you a little bit about personal life. How long have you been married?
We've got a 30th anniversary coming up in November, so happily married for almost 30 years.
That's awesome. How'd y'all meet?
Uh, we we we're both from the same small hometown. We actually met one summer when we were both, well, we'd met before, but we started dating one summer when we were both home from college for the summer.
Yeah, very
So
cool.
yeah, and then,
That's very Hallmarkish.
yes,
So
exactly. Yeah,
yeah,
it's not like
I
we were
love it.
childhood sweethearts, but yeah, not too long after, right?
Yeah, no, I love it. Well, let me ask you this, because you have a stressful job.
Yeah.
Whether I don't know whether you recognize that or not, but a lot of people count on you to make good decisions. That comes with pressure. Sometimes I think you feel that, but we as just those in the business feel that pressure, and sometimes we don't. But it's there. How has her support in what you have done in your career helped elevate what you've been able to accomplish?
Yeah. So, well, I'm very fortunate to be married to a very supportive wife, Mary Lee. Love you. But she's been in the corporate world. She's had some big jobs, and we made the determination that we were leaving Goldman, and sort of the next day we're off and we're on the world of being not only independent but entrepreneurs. And she just kind of turns to me and says, "Well, if I'm in for a penny, I'm in for a pound. Like, what do I need to do?" She rolled up her sleeves and said, "What can I do to help and support the business?" So not only be supportive of me in the decision that we made, but she dug in. And so she took on a lot of, she had some HR roles and some accounting roles, and still pitches in here and there as we go through the growth of the business. But yeah, so it's super, super, super supportive. And like I said, daughter's in the business. So yeah, very much it's got a family feel to it, and I love it. Couldn't be more excited about it.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, so let's talk about the weekends and the evenings. You're no longer at work. You've put the computer down for the day. Where are we going to find Tim Harder?
Well, if it's during the NBA regular season, it'll be at a Mavs game. Used to be
Maybe one day.
playoffs.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe
Used
one
to
day
be the
postseason.
playoffs. Yeah, well, hopefully the postseason again will come back again this year. We should have a healthy Kyrie and a young Cooper Flag.
Yeah.
So we'll cross our fingers. Although the
So you and your wife, big Mavs fans?
big Mavs fans, yep.
Yeah.
So it's funny. I was Mavs kind of partial season ticket holder for a long time, and then I said, hey, I think I want to get full-time season tickets. That was Luka Doncic inspired kind of a decision. And she's like, great. And then she started going, and now she's a huge NBA fan, huge Mavs fan. And it's a good compliment for me, because she knows everything that their girlfriends and wives are doing. She follows them all on social media. So, and I know all the stats, the numbers for the players, and she knows what, their favorite, the name of their dog is, so it's a good combination for us.
Yeah. What else do you guys like to do? Y'all travel much?
Yeah, we do quite a bit of travel, try to be a little bit adventuresome. She used to be the vice president of marketing for a big world travel company. So she traveled all over the world. I didn't get to go along for a lot of those because I was building career in other ways. And so, we were just splitting the duties of being parents at the time, and trying to be solo parents for a week or two at a time as she did that. But yeah, we'd get some travel in. We got, we were fortunate to meet a couple of friends from Slovenia at the Dallas Mavericks finals one year. And so we kind of, that was a fun adventure. So Slovenia, I'll put a plug in for that place. That's phenomenal.
Yeah. So tell that story though, real quickly. I mean, just a brief version. So you met these folks at a Mavs game, and then ultimately made a trip to go and visit
Yeah,
them?
we met them right outside the Mavs game in the NBA Finals. We happened to have an extra pair of tickets, and we were down 3-0. Not a lot of enthusiasm for them. So people, we'd sat down, and this couple sits next to us, and next thing we know, we're having a conversation with them. They didn't have tickets. They were visiting from Slovenia, and my wife said, well, we happen to have an extra pair of tickets. Come on in. And so we came in. They invited us to Slovenia the next year. We said, absolutely, well, let's go meet them. And they just visited us here in Dallas just recently. So now we found lifelong friends out of a odd coincidence.
Man, that's really cool. So when you guys travel, kids go with you?
Every time, if we can make it happen. We've been fortunate recently. The spring break for the high school or the college kid, and the one started working. She used her week of PTO to go with us, and so we got a Hawaii trip in there. Even though it rained the whole week, we were there. Yeah, it was a good trip. But yeah, we try to keep. That's one of the, I think the things that you can really do as a family and get that dedicated time. It's really hard once the kids get older. I think a lot of people understand it's hard to get them away from their friends and the devices, and
you got to pick the right spots to go visit,
pick
right?
Pick and choose.
So maybe an island or somewhere overseas. Yeah, for sure. Well, let me ask you this question, and I don't want to say in closing, but as we kind of near the end of our conversation, what's next for Tim Harder? I mean, you've built an amazing career. I think you would acknowledge humbly that you've had a good run at it.
Been a good run. Yes.
Yep. And I think you've got many more years ahead of you. But in a perfect world, what does it look like?
Yeah, I think I'm looking forward to, there's a number of things yet we want to accomplish in the business. So that's, I think, number one. Number two, I want that legacy to be there. And, not just in terms of Quotient, but I think in terms of how we manage money, how we think. So many people in the investment side of the world, it's performance, and it's either because of the way they're compensated or it's ego. I don't, but for me, it's what does this accomplish for the clients? And if I can instill that and keep that so that does translate for the next 3 decades, that's why I want my lasting legacy to be. So I want to build that, and I want to build that so deeply into our culture that there's no way it can go away. That's really what I'd like to make sure happens.
Yeah. Well, Tim, it's impressive to hear you talk about not only where you've been, but where you're going. And, our goal with Investor Magazine, and by the way, I think you know this, I think I've told you this, but if not, I'll tell you now. We're doing these feature series where we bring what we believe to be influential people in the industry under the lights, right? Put the cameras on and have an interview and really get to know not just who you are professionally, but also glean light on who you are on a personal standpoint, because we just think that's important. But at the end of the day, the voices of Investor Magazine are specifically geared towards investors. But the whole idea behind it is to make sure that the folks that are providing guidance and insight to those investors are folks who are not pundits on TV. They're not analysts. They're folks who are sitting knee to knee with clients, or in today's world, maybe across a Zoom call.
Yeah.
But they're practitioners. They're doing this every day. They're managing wealth, and they're stewarding the financial livelihood of hundreds, if not thousands, of people. And I think that provides a very unique perspective, one that is highly, highly valuable. So I appreciate the opportunity to sit down with you and talk.
As do I. It's been great watching the growth of Investor Magazine. Love it. And thanks for having me. This is just, it's a kick.
Yeah, cool.
So,
well, Tim,
good.
I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Steve.
Yep.